Hello and welcome back to Nikki Does for yet another Doodba video. In the first video really, I explained a bit about what Doodba is and how it helps you install and create and install an Odoo environment, how to build and deploy an Odoo environment. It's a pretty cool system, and thanks to Tecnativa in Spain for putting that together. So I noticed there weren't a lot of videos out there on Doodba, so I'm struggling through it and I thought I would take you along with me. So I will make plenty of mistakes if I do, and if I do obvious things, you're welcome to comment on them, but please do understand this is I'm foraging through this path just like some of you are. Let's get started and see what we've got. The first thing I'm going to start with is a brand new container that we just put together. So we'll remote into that. Let's switch over to the terminal and let's see what we've got here. It is called Doodba Test, and I can SSH in as root. If you have questions about some of this, I'm happy to have you ask those in the comments as well. So we are using Ubuntu 24, and it's pretty much a brand new installation. So it's a container, but we shouldn't really know that. If we look over at the browser here and we look at, let's jump back to where we're supposed to be. This is the Doodba project, and what we really care about is the Doodba template. Where do we talk about that? Here we go, right over there, template, and our template is going to take us over to this one. So here's the Doodba project. That's not really what you need. And I mentioned this in the first video. What you need really is this Doodba copier template. And like all good GitHub projects, we're going to scroll straight down to the README, and we're going to look at what it tells us to do, and we're going to disregard some of it because, well, partially because some of it's not current, and partially because some of it is not what we're doing. The first thing we're going to have to do is install pipx, and let's go back to the terminal and take a look at that. So if we do what the instructions say, they're going to say Python 3-m pip install user pipx, and we're going to find out immediately that we are currently in the global environment, not a virtual environment. So if we install pipx here, it is going to clutter up the system-wide Python, and that's probably okay here. But what we're going to do is create a virtual environment first. So here it's telling you in this error text, which is super cool. It's giving you the command line here to make the virtual environment. So let's do that. It's Python 3-m venv, and we're going to call it dot for hidden venv. Let's let that do its thing. And then we're going to activate it. .venv bin activate. And now our little parenthetical thing here tells us that we're in a virtual environment called venv. So let's try this again now. Let's do Python 3-m pip install user pipx. We don't need the user. So now we'll have pipx installed. So now if we're looking back at the instructions in the browser, we've got a number of things here that we're supposed to do with pipx. We're going to install Docker Compose, which, as I mentioned just a moment ago, I think Docker Compose is not going to work. That's no longer current. So let's get this other stuff, and then we'll go install Docker second. Back to the terminal, and we're going to just paste in to install copier, invoke, pre-commit, and then we're going to make sure the path works correctly. This cool little graphic to show you the install, little progress thing that doesn't chew up your entire command line. So we've got invoke 2.20. We should have copier 9, there it is, 9.31. And we've got, I think that's fairly current for copier. 9 is what we need. And let's take a look at how I know that. If we go back to the template, this is the template, right? Yeah. All right. And if we go look at the copier file, it's a YAML file, copier.yaml. And we'll see, I think we see in here that the minimum version, minimum version 4.10. Why is that? I thought it was, are we on the right branch? I think we are. I thought it was version 9. Well, in any case, we don't need that. Silly me. All right, let's get back on my game here. Terminal, and considering adding shell completions for pipx, you'll need to either re-log in for the path changes. So we're going to do that. We could source the bash RC, but we're just going to do the simple, easy thing, which is exit. We'll exit, we'll reconnect, and we'll connect with our venv. So let's just look for that venv, and there it is, the hidden directory, the blue one. So again, that's going to be source venv bin activate. Okay, we're back in the virtual environment. Next thing I did say we were going to do was to install Docker. And I've got that here in the browser. If we go to Docker, I think what I did there is search for install Docker engine on Ubuntu. So let's go right to Ubuntu. You can tell I was there before. And the first thing it's going to tell us to do here is to install old versions, which we're not worried about. We can do it on 2404. Install the old versions. I don't have any. Installation methods, we're going to use the apt repository method. So never a good idea just to blindly copy all this stuff, but you should take a quick look at what's going on with it. We are logged in as root, so we don't need sudo, but that's not going to cause us a problem. So it's going to try to install certificates and curl, set up our keyring. It's going to download the GPG key to allow the Docker apt repo to be accepted, and it's going to tee in some sources list file called Docker list, and then it's going to update. So that's pretty cool. That's nothing I'm too flustered about. That's all part of the Docker website. So I'm going for it. You can spend more time reading through that if you like. And this is really not going to install Docker. It's just going to get the package list set up. So it's going to read Docker repo. So if we go back to the browser and we look at the next step, we want the latest Docker, and we're going to grab this line, which is going to get apt-get install Docker CE, CE-CLI containered, a couple other Docker things, including the Docker Compose plugin, which would not have worked if we just ran that right from the Technativa README. So here I'm going to paste in to get all this stuff. You don't not have to do this, but I'm going to run apt, not apt-get. Do we want to continue? Sure. And I'll be right back. Okay, a couple minutes later when we have Docker. So if we want to make sure Docker's working, we can say Docker run hello world. It obviously could not find the hello world image locally, so it had to go pull it down. And if you see here, we have hello from Docker. It's sort of buried in here. It would have been cool if they put some color in there to show it out, but there it is, hello from Docker. So we got all kinds of things like Docker PS to show what's running, nothing. And that's awesome. That's where we should be. Let's go back to the browser. We don't need Docker stuff anymore. We are going to stay root. If we didn't stay root, we'd have to add our local user to the Docker group to make running Docker a lot easier. All right, back to the template, jumping around a bit. Next thing is we have some, we're going to start the template. Are we there yet? Well, that's fantastic. We have copier, we have Docker. Do we have get? I'm just going to look offline, get dash /v. We have get version 2.43. We have invoke and pre-commit because they were done here, and we have virtual environment, obviously, because we made a virtual environment, so we are ready to rock and roll. So really the next line is this one. And if you aren't familiar with Copier, which I certainly was not, Copier is a template system that's going to take this Doodba copier template that we're in right now, and it is going to prompt us with a number of questions, and then it is going to insert our answers to those questions in through a number of Jinja templates. Jinja template. So Jinja is a templating language, and that is going to replace, in a smart way, it is going to replace things in the Jinja template with the values that we expressed in our answers and create files. That's the whole point of this whole thing, is to take the copier template here, which has a lot of files in it, and if you notice they all end in Jinja, the ones that we care about end in Jinja, and those files will get translated or modified as they get put into our instance with the information that we answered in our questions and the question responses. So the questions are in, let's just take a minute to go through this. The question responses are in the copier.yaml. So this is the questions themselves. This kind of drives Copier. It does drive Copier. So it's saying the template suffix file is Jinja right there. There's our Copier version, required version 9. It's not going to try to process files. This is like our get ignore file. It's not going to try to process any files in our template folder that match these patterns. So it's not going to do anything with poetry.lock. It's not going to do anything with get ignore, or I should say get GitHub or get modules, the whole folder in there. And it's going to skip if these are our private key stuff. So if those exist, it's not going to mess with some of that stuff. These tasks will be run after we finish. This is the entry point after you answer all your questions and you're done with your last one. A bunch of stuff is going to go and run, and this is what's going to run. It's going to run invoke after update and invoke develop. It's also going to run migrations depending on where we started from and where we're going to. So there are these invoke with these commands that are going to run for depending on where you started. And here you can see quite a few migrations. Now we get to the meat of this, and we're going to see this in just a minute. These are the questions that the user will be asked, and I am your user at this point. So in just a moment, we're going to see on which Odoo version is it based. And it's going to present us with a list of floats from 7 through 17. And when we answer that, that will be stored in the Odoo version. I guess is a tag. I don't know what the word for it is. Then we'll be asked the next question, what is the Odoo proxy? And it can be either traffic or some other proxy if you like. So if we choose traffic, now watch the next thing here. This one is conditional. So this line right here, when, says this traffic version. If you chose Odoo proxy as traffic, then it's going to present this question. If you don't choose it as traffic, it's not going to present this question. It's going to say which traffic version, 1, 2, or 3. And notice the choices 1, 2, or 3 will set traffic version to either v1.7, v2.4, or v3.0. We're going to go down through all these questions right here. And let's find one with a default in it. Here we go. So maybe a lot of them had that in there. Project name. Project name is going to be a string, and it's going to say, what is your project name? That's going to be the help. Do not use dots or spaces, yada, yada. And then it's going to substitute in my project-odoo as the default project name. And you'll be well in your rights to overwrite that, and whatever you enter ends up as the project_name tag. So that's all cool, right? So now let's go back to the template and let's take a look at where that's going to go. And I am doing this off the cuff, so let's see how this goes. I'm looking for an easy one here, an easier one. Well, here's one that's going to be interesting. readme.markdown.jinja. So in your final project, which will be a directory that this copier system is going to create for you, you're going to end up with a readme.md. And copier is going to take the answers we just put based on that copier.yaml file, and it's going to modify this readme.jinja, take the Jinja extension off, and place into your final project a readme.md, a markdown readme. So let's see how it's going to do that. It's full of tags or Jinja syntax right here. These open and close braces are Jinja syntax. And let's just look at this one right here. If there's a GitLab URL, so if there is a GitLab URL, one of the questions you're going to be asked as part of the copier.yaml is there a GitLab URL? And if there is one, that is going to drive these two lines right here, this section. And the first one says, not pipeline status. It's going to place in the GitLab URL /badges/ Odoo version / pipeline.svg right here. So you're going to get a little graphic in there. And then it's going to have GitLab URL with the commits and the Odoo version. So, pretty cool. It's going to be really flexible, this README is. Let's look for another one that makes good sense to us. So here's one. I don't know if that's not, by the way, that bang in front of there, the exclamation point. So here it's saying, maybe if it's not Technativa, I don't know. So the good part is you don't have to understand all this stuff. What you really need to understand is that this readme.md.jinja is going to be tweaked with your answers, customized, and placed into your folder. And the same is going to happen with all these other .jinja files, even in these subdirectories. So if we go into Odoo here and we go look at, say, Docker ignore, let's see if there's one in there. Nope, there's no customized, well, no, because it wasn't ending in Jinja. So even in subdirectories, it's going to traverse all these subdirectories. One of the interesting things it's going to do is make you a custom, where is it? Workspace file. And I could swear it's in here, and if I don't find it quickly, we'll just move forward. Okay, so let's go through and start answering these questions. So we need to grab from that repo. I'll show you what I'm doing. We need to grab from that repo. We need to grab the easiest way is going to be go here at the README, this right here. Copier copy is the command, and then we're going to get the GitHub Technativa Doodba copier template, and then we're going to place it into our current path. Let's see about that. So we'll go into terminal. We're going to paste this, and we're not going to press enter yet. That didn't really work, did it? So let's type it in. Copier copy GH Technativa without an H. Doodba copier template. If I press enter here, it would not work because there's no destination path. So I'm going to say Doodba test. That's going to be the name of our subproject, what this whole thing is going to build. So the copier system is going to go out to GitHub, grab this copier template repo and process it. But it won't, because this is fairly new, I think, in copier 9, because template uses potentially unsafe features, which are tasks. And this means that these tasks could go through and destroy your system or expose you to unsafe things and so forth. So you have to have some level of trust of this, and you have to say trust. All right, now this is what we saw earlier, and we'll install version 17, and it's defaulting to traffic, and that's the one we're going to use, so we'll leave that. And now here are the 1, 2, and 3, and it's pushing us to 2.4. I'm going to leave that. US English, your password. So I'm going to just use, don't tell anybody, I'm going to use admin. Do you want to list the databases publicly? No. So here you have to kind of know some stuff, right? If you're going to use a Docker image registry, To publish your final Odoo images, then you have to say that here. And this is where you would have either a Docker login to Docker, or you would run, say, your own GitLab instance that is your own private instance with your own name. So you could change this to GitLab. Doesn't matter what container registry it is, as long as it's OCI compatible. So let's just leave, I don't have one that I'm going to show you here, so let's just leave that blank. Tell me who you are. Let's say we're Doodba Testers. And my project's name is going to be Doodba Test Odoo. We'll use the Boost software license, and we're not going to use GitLab for this. Now, you probably should, because this is where it's going to push all of your changes that you make to your local Doodba project, this one that we're working on, would then be pushed up to GitLab. And that would mean that it's stored somewhere. So if you screw it up, you can always go back. If you lose your computer, you can always go back and get it. And B, when you go to deploy on other platforms, like let's say you're going to build up some servers on AWS or somewhere else to run your production version, you can pull it down from your GitLab project, your GitLab repository. So again, I'm going to leave this blank. I'm not willing to expose the one that I use for that. So now some confusing stuff, and this is where we're all learning together. Here it's going to ask you for a lot of stuff. So it's asking us for the production domains for this project. So this is the start. I don't know what that icon is. Is it a flashlight? I have no idea what that little emoji is. Like an ice cream cone. Looks like an Olympic torch that went out. No clue what it is. But configure the production domains for this project. And this is the format, and it's a YAML list. So that's a little bit difficult and confusing, because you must write this as one-line YAML. You can't write this in the standard form, and that's really a pain in the butt. So the good news is we're just going to have the one host, which is, we're actually not configuring production domains. So if you were to erase these braces, watch what happens. It gives you a one-line YAML here as a suggestion, and that comes right from that Doodba template. So if we went, notice here, it tells you could go to technativa.com RANU. So there is a link shortener going on there, and it is going to take you right here to, let's go to it. It's going to take you right to Technativa's GitHub page, and it's going to highlight these lines. And these lines in the Doodba copier template in copier.yaml, which we looked at just a bit ago, these lines right here are the placeholder text. So when you erased that first bit, the two braces, this is what you got. So this is what the YAML looks like, and then copier renders that to look like this in your terminal session. So I'm going to leave that up to you to figure out, and I'm going to leave this blank, which means on my PC I am going to press Escape Enter, and then it's going to say what's the first host from the first domain. Let's see, what are we asking here? Configure the test domains. So you'd want to have a test domain here also. I'm not going to do that because I'm really just going to use the develop domain. These are, what is this? Tell me the list of paths where you want to forbid web crawlers. So I'm going to leave the default for that. Oops. Escape, enter. If you need to whitelist certain network addresses, like if you want to push this out to the web, but you only want people on your work domain to access them, then you can do that. I'm not worried about that. Escape, enter. We're going to use Postgres 15. It'll be the Odoo user to connect from the Odoo instance to Postgres. And the database is going to be prod for production. Well, that's fine. The Postgres user password, let's just use Odoo. This is not a secure thing. We're not going to expose the database service. so that we could connect other things to the database. This is going to leave the database on its own internal Docker network. So you can't have things outside of your container, your compose container group, your Docker containers cannot access the database. That's what that was. Your Odoo database filter, yeah, we're just going to look for ones that start with prod. This is I mean, you really have to configure this, right? So it's really kind of, so you would have to do like Doodba test at no reply. This is going to be like Doodba test dot local. So we're going to intercept the mail with this mail server that's built into our Docker containers for this. So we really don't care about where our mail is coming from. But if you were going to use this in production, which, that's the reason you're probably doing this, you would want to configure a proper SMTP mail server here. And this would be if your organization was doodbatest.com, you'd want to put something in like that if a user gets a message from here that doesn't have a valid from address, it comes from something that you say, oh, I recognize that as Doodba test at my company. So let's just do example.com because that's the appropriate way. All right. And it's now going to also ask us for SMTP settings. So this would be like mail.example.com. So you have to know what your SMTP server is, where you are going to sign in to send SMTP mail. So we'll leave that as example. And then this Amazon S3 bucket question is about where you would want to store big files that are not, that you don't store in the instance, because you don't necessarily, like let's say you're using this to let people upload all their invoices and all sorts of pictures and video and stuff. You don't want to store that all in your local machine like I am here. You want to store those on some offsite storage. So this is saying it's an Amazon compatible S3 bucket, and it's really cool. This is a very open sourcey. So duplicity is going to allow you to, in this case, backup, and it will go to whatever backend storage system you want, but it uses kind of an AWS S3 bucket interface to get there. So you'd have to do some reading on that. This is beyond the scope of this intro. We're already at 27 minutes, so you'd have to look up duplicity, and I guess if you have questions about it, you can post those and see what happens from there. So I'm not going to store those backups. Now what just happened here is we just went through and did the stuff that we said was going to happen in Copier. We ran the 2 tasks and we ran any migrations. So we invoked develop to do this. First off, we did the copying. We processed all the Jinja files into these files. The ones that ended in Jinja, and again, the Jinja suffix got truncated, and we just have these files. So now if we were to look, we'll have copier answers.yaml. And that's going to contain all the answers we just did. So if we reran this, the defaults would now be our answers here, which is great. There's one exception to that, and that would be the private information will not be stored here, so the passwords. And we'll take a look at where those go. Then it initialized a get repo right in root doodbatest.get. So that was like the get init command. And it used master as the main branch, which is probably because I didn't config get, I guess, to do the default branch as main. So that's kind of, I thought that was already happening in this Git version, but it didn't. And it ran pre-commit, so it did some hooks within Git so that when we do a commit, it will do, the idea here is that it will run some linters to check our code style to make sure that our code comports with our code standards. We're still in our virtual environment down here, so now if we do a list files in our Doodba test directory, we should see we have some stuff in here. And in fact, we have the Doodba test directory, which is where the copier template system, where we, oops, I can highlight this a different way, right here where we said that's where we're going to go. So let's get out of that and let's change to Doodba test. This is where this is our sub project. So it should be a get repo, and it is. It has a bunch of stuff that has not been committed yet. So if we do get history, could I spell it? Never mind, I'm exposing my weaknesses here. So instead, let's take a look at this and see what we've got. So we've got the copier answers.yaml, and that's a hidden file, copier. And if we look here, all those tags are there with the whatever we put in. You are not supposed to edit this manually. You just run through the copier update, and if you do copier update, you'll update, and if you do copier copy, I think that's the one I believe is the one that runs through this again. So do not edit this manually. It's tempting to do that, but don't. I said I was going to look at where the secrets are. If we look at Docker, the hidden directory Docker, and we do list there, we'll see that we have an Odoo environment file, and that's got our admin password equals admin. And if we look at our DB access, that's got our Postgres password as Odoo. So these are going to end up being environment variables when this container runs. So then if we go back to the browser and take a look at the template here, it tells us to do this, and then it's going to say, here's how you update. So if the template updates up, this is how you update. We're going to skip past that. Backing up here, copier asks you a lot of questions. That's what we did. Now let's see what happens. Using your sub-project to build. The next thing it's going to do is we're going to look at how to do that. And how to do that is in the docs. So if I click this, really where it's going to go is this docs folder right here. And it's going to get us into daily usage markdown file. So here it's going to tell us to use this, we need to know some of this stuff, and that's very true. And it's going to give us 3 environments we can play with. The first one is development. The second one is, where is it? Production. I thought the test was somewhere else, but testing, there it is. So let's focus only on development. I'm sorry, that's what we're going to do today because the rest are big topics. So the first thing to do is to set up invoke develop, to set up a Visual Studio Code development environment. Whoops. And I just lost where I was here. This is going to be using devil.yaml, and they want you to use Visual Studio Code. It is a very direct template system. It's not very flexible. You're not going to be using the Atom editor if you're running this template system. So we're going to use Visual Studio Code. So let's go back and invoke develop and see what happens there. Back to the terminal. Invoke. Invoke is a commanding system that uses Python tasks.py, which is right here. So these are where these tasks are. And if we say invoke list, that will tell us the available tasks. What invoke list did was to go and do tasks.py and find each of the things that are marked as tasks. They're decorated actually in Python. So develop will be one of these, and develop is going to set up a basic development environment. And I think you do invoke, is it help develop? Yes. So let's do, and this isn't documented here, this is documented in the invoke command, you'd have to know it. So let's do invoke help restart. Let's look for one with something bigger in it. Install, which is going to install Odoo add-ons. So which add-on do you want to install? So here's the syntax on how to do that. So let's clear this and do that again. There we go. So invoke, install, options, and then you can add other tasks on the same line. So install Odoo modules. It's going to install add-ons from the directory being worked on. So the directory we're in, if there's an add-ons directory already, it's going to use that. Otherwise, we can install other options, which is like the path to the file. I don't know, you can read this, all the private ones, all the core ones, all the enterprise ones. It's kind of pretty cool. It's pretty flexible. So the one we said we were going to do is invoke develop, and watch this go by. So what did we get out of that? What I can tell you we got is a VS Code workspace file, and that is right here, doodba.doodbatest, which is our project name. So doodba is static, doodbatest was our project name, and then .code-workspace is also static. And this is a file we can open in Visual Studio Code, and it'll get us really far along on developing Odoo. And I'll show that briefly, but then we're going to end this video. The other thing you'll notice is it symlinked docker compose.yaml to devel.yaml. So if we were to do docker compose up, we would be actually running devel.yaml. So as we change environments, let's go back and look at what invokes we have. As we build different environments, it's going to use that hyperlink or that symlink to get us other things running. If we're doing production, by the way, we're not using invoke to get into production. So just be aware of that. Okay, so let's open Visual Studio Code. Let's see how we're going to do this because we've got a different remote. So I guess I'll show all that. Let's see how it goes. Here's Visual Studio Code, and we're currently connected to this remote. So we're going to close that remote connection, and we're going to open a different remote. So connect to SSH is what we're using, and this is going to be, this may not work well. I forgot how to do this, connect to host. And then we're going to connect to Doodba test. And of course you don't get to see this, so let's see if I can change that while we're live here. Because it opened a separate window. So there we go, that should do it. All right, it's a Linux. This is remote development with, see, this probably isn't gonna work very well. The key doesn't match yet, so it's not working out, but this is gonna be remote development. We're gonna leave that for another video. This is live, this is as clean as it gets, so I'm gonna end this one here. Thank you for joining me on this. I hope it was helpful. If you have suggestions or thoughts that will help the community, please consider either making your own video with those corrections or adding comments down below so that all of us can learn from the things that you know. Thanks for watching, and I hope to have a couple more of these videos as I continue to learn more about Doodba and how it relates with Odoo.